After we're done, oh, we forgot to put that on. Good, okay. After we get through this and pass the audits, I'm gonna look back and reflect on this, and I think there might be, I mean, I have questions about this reconciliation process, and I think there's a better way to do it. And I'm gonna report on that after we're through the audit, which leads us to two proposals from the Finance Committee. I put the language in the chat, so that could be included in a minute, just copy and paste, I guess. But first one, following up on the recommendation from last year's audit, which made a whole lot of sense, which should keep our audit at the suggested price that they're quoting, because that last year they had to do extra work, which drove up the price. So the first proposal is that the WORT board contract with Numbers for Nonprofits for audit prep for year 2020. Well, actually, it should be 2023 at the rate of $200 per hour, up to 10 hours. The 10-hour quote was maximum. They didn't feel it would go that high, probably take less, but so we're not going to pay him 10 hours for, he'll bill us hourly, and but it should be less than 10 hours. So we just put that in there to cover any potential problem that could lead up to 10 hours. Do you want to do these one by one, Stu?
Yeah, let's do these one by one. And is that the recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't, it's the recommendation of the committee, doesn't need a separate motion, so it's before us. Any discussion on the recommendation from the Finance Committee for Numbers for Nonprofits for up to 10 hours at $200 an hour to prep the 2023 audit?
One, Doug, I just saw that email from the auditor. Can you just briefly describe what some of the work they recommended Numbers for Nonprofits to do?
Well, not specifically, but Hannah did send the list of journal entries from last year. Some of the problems had to do with payroll liabilities that crossed the year. Some of them had to do with underwriting contracts where they paid up front, but then we didn't run the spots until well into the year. So those need to be done differently in an accrual accounting system where we track the income month by month to match when the spots are playing. So in that sense, it actually becomes restricted funds. There were still a few other things. It wasn't like anything was wrong. It was like how it was tracked was incorrect. It's not that money wasn't tracked at all. It was just a cleaning up of the books, if you will. And it's all things that have to do with liabilities and income that cross the end of the year mostly. These were the things that they felt Mary Joy could use some more help and training with. Many of these things Mary Joy has come up to speed on, and she's really looking for assurance that she's doing it correctly. And that's specifically the type of work that Numbers for Nonprofits does, is to prepare you. They don't do audits themselves, but they do help prepare the books for when the auditors come in, so that the things are accounted for in an accrual method and not a cash accounting method. I hope that helps explain it.
Yeah, there's what Doug just described is essentially a scope of services with a little bit of a detail that a lot of people don't know what those terms mean. So it's recommended by the auditors. It's a good idea, and it's essentially going to increase our efficiency and should make the audit prep and audit go smoother. So we're recommending that we vote it.
Okay, any further discussion or questions of Dean or Doug? Seeing none of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that one's adopted. Then you got another one.
Yeah, we just got the quote back for the audit itself, And before I read it to you, the work being done on the audit is for 2023. So as I looked at this, I realized it should probably say 2023, unless someone thinks it should be 24. I don't think so. This is the year being audited is 2023. So unless anyone has an objection, let's keep it at 2023.
We'll know what it means.
Yeah. So the second one is that the WORT board approved the proposal from Wegner for the 2024 audit at a price of $11,250. Now that was not voted on by the finance committee. That just came in today. So I'm moving that and it requires a second.
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion.
Yeah. Dean, do you know, or Doug, do you know how this compares to last year's price?
It is an increase of, I want to say nearly $1,000. Was it 10%, Dean?
That it was 10% increase because all their prices have gone up 10% based on their own increases in expenses. But she also said that it was lower than last year because of some of the extra work they had to do. There were additional charges last year that due to, which is one of the reasons why they recommended numbers for nonprofit to assist us.
Okay, so the base price is higher, but the final price may be lower if numbers for nonprofits gets things in shape.
Yeah.
Okay. Susan, were you seeking recognition?
No, I just was going to mention that I thought that we got an additional bill for, I thought 3,000 because of the work last year.
Okay, okay. Which hopefully we won't pay yet. Jeffrey.
My question is, given that our normal procedure, and I haven't been on that long, so this is my assumption, would be that kind of thing would have gone through finance committee, which would make a recommendation to the board. I understand you just got it. My question is, what is the timing on this? Like, can we defer that vote until next month after finance committee has looked at it, perhaps given Wegner a call and say, hey, this seems kind of high or whatever. And if finance committee recommends it, I'll support it because I trust you guys, but it feels rushed. And if there's a deadline and we have to get it started, then that's another story, obviously.
Dean and then Susan.
Yeah, the audit is set for April 15. And sure, if we want to hold off a month for the official vote, and we can talk to them a little bit more and perhaps even get sent the scope of service and the letter that they send. So it's no problem. We could hold off. But in the meantime, Doug, who pretty much takes the lead in discussing having discussions with the auditor, can finalize everything, get the scope of the audits, which is a pretty routine and similar things, and we can hold off. And actually, could we jump the line and ask Doug to?
Yeah, Doug, do you want to, what do you got?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in there. Yeah, Hannah even apologized for the lateness of her reply to my email. I don't think there's any problem whatsoever with holding off the official board approval until February's meeting. The work wouldn't even begin until March with an April field work date. So there is plenty of time to go through this, and then present real numbers to the board. I can go back to Mary Joy and find out exactly how much we paid beginning to end last year for this audit. And I agree with Jeff. I feel that this could be tabled for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Susan and then Laura.
I do want to acknowledge the fact that in past years, right now, we're not going to get someone else who's very well qualified to do the audit because they're booked. They're booked way out, which is why
Yeah.
we end up with Wagner every single year. And if we wanted someone else to do the audit, we needed to start requesting that back in like September or something. We've been through this before. So I know this. The second thing is that bringing someone new in who isn't familiar with how things work really adds to the amount of your audit. Somebody who hasn't ever done WORT's books
Okay.
before.
Susan,
Is-
we're not talking about change. We're just talking about referring this and giving finance a chance to look at it. We're not talking about looking for a new auditor. That's not on the table. Not under discussion. Laura?
Good point, Susan, but I want to agree with Jeff that it is one of the larger amounts that we've been asked to approve, and I'm just not comfortable with the short time span we've had to look at it. So I really like the idea that we are able to table this and to give it a little more thought before and I'm sure we're going to approve it. I just like the idea of having more time.
And just for the sake of it, I mean, what time, when did we get this quote, Doug?
This afternoon.
Nah.
Exactly. Exactly. We have the time.
Yeah.
We have the
It's a matter of
time.
self-respect. You give us a quote in the afternoon, we're not going to vote on it that evening. We have
Well,
no.
yeah. And I mean, the whole thing is we have time to put together the complete information to present the board.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah.
I withdraw the motion.
Is was it seconded?
No.
I seconded it, I think, for purposes of discussion, because
Yeah.
you're not really supposed to talk about it if
Right.
there's no second.
After the second, yeah. You have to draw your second too, I
I'll
think.
withdraw my second.
Okay. Okay. So we understand. Why don't we either Doug or Dean let Wagner know that it's going to be on the February agenda?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And
Okay.
and they'll be fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay then, anything else from the treasurer's report?
I'm good.
I'm sorry, Susan, do you still have your hand up?
Nope,
Okay,
just
okay.
not to lower it.
Okay, anything else from the treasurer's report, Dean?
No, that was it.
Okay, and somehow in that colloquy of getting correspondence, I recalled I actually did have something to report under the president's report. And it is that there has been, we got more correspondence from our attorney in the litigation, seeking to schedule some prep sessions and depositions. Rebecca, did you get that email and from me forwarding the correspondence from our attorney looking to set up a deposition and some prep time with you?
Yes, I did see that today, so I have to just check my calendar and reach out and establish that.
Okay, thank you. And whereas they were originally thinking of a trial date in April, now it's looked like it's being pushed back till fall. So, eventually Charles Dickens will start writing about this, but for now, the next step is Dave and Sybil and Rebecca will get with our attorneys and do some deposition prep and then be deposed, and then things will go on from that. But that I did get that email, I think yesterday, and so I should report on that. Okay, then back to orders of the day, staff reports. The first, okay, Doug. Well, as Tom is not here, but does anybody have any questions or comments on either of Tom's reports?
I'll just jump
Yeah.
in and
Yeah, Laura.
say that we're moving pretty quickly now on the installation of the new boards, in particular, the training on the operation of the new boards before we install the first one in Combo A. Just sort of a heads up to everyone here.
Thank you. Then Doug, anything that you want to call to our attention or say about your report?
Yeah, just that Chiliocracy is coming up on February 4th. I just got another restaurant today, so we've got 9 restaurants competing. So those of you on Facebook, it would be really helpful if you click interested in the event and then invite all your friends. And please come. We have the Grazers playing. Brian from Another Green Morning is in that group. So we have some bluegrass music. Harmony Bar 1 to 4 on February 4th. Spread the word. Thank you.
And just as a general request, for those of you on social media, do be active in liking and forwarding and resending WORT related stuff, because it just
really
helps. It really helps.
It really does. Oh, the other thing I'd like to mention is that I've also had some late breaking underwriting sales. And I know I reported last Friday that my total was 5,000 something. It's now 10,491. So I've had a big week. Yeah, so it's about 1,000 ahead of last year where I was at this point. So it's a good start. It's a good start.
Excellent.
Must be a new smile.
Thank you. Laura, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, this is just kind of related to your first comment about social media. Do you recommend that we on the board have social media accounts? Is that a requirement, shall we say?
It is not a requirement, and some of it is so toxic. I would not recommend that people who are not on social media necessarily get on social media. But I know some of us are active on Facebook, and like Ralph, man, every time there's a WORT item on Facebook, man, Ralph is liking it. I mean, and that kind of stuff, and it generates a kind of momentum that when you see, 10 people have liked this could be interesting, or 19 people are interested in going to this. And if you're in social media, do be proactive in advancing WORT related stuff.
Understood. I understand the value of it. I just was wondering if I should get back on it.
If you're not on it, I would be very, I would not, it's certainly not a requirement. And a lot of people don't have the stomach for it to be,
especially in an election year.
Oh God, it's going to be, yeah.
I feel vindicated. Thanks.
Yeah. But for those of you who are on it, hit that like button. Okay. If nothing else for Doug's report, Susan.
You can see a board request was at the top of my thing. I'm checking in a minute, but as of yesterday, 3 board members had not completed the CSW request.
Okay, this is important. We need to have that form filled out.
It's the last I'm waiting for. Everything else I've submitted. It's the board that's keeping me from finishing that.
When we're
I'm going to look right now to see if everyone. I mean, if somebody didn't yesterday do it or not. So let me and I'll come back to you. Okay. You can keep going.
Okay. Then we'll move on down to Sybil. Anybody have any, why am I getting these strange error prompts? Anybody have any questions, comments, or thoughts on Sybil's report?
Doug's got his hand up.
I'm sorry, Doug.
And I'm sorry, this is back to Susan. Susan, did you need more than basic name, address, telephone number? Do you also need occupation? Is that what's holding it up?
One person hasn't put that either where they work or that they're self-employed.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Susan?
I was just thinking if it was basic information, we could pull it out of the volunteer database, but we do not have occupation information.
Okay.
In the volunteer database.
Susan, I have two things to say. Number one, I have checked self-employed twice. So if it's me, then there's a
I'm checking.
problem with your link. And if it's not me, then what you need to do is directly tell those three people. Don't say there's a problem with the whole board, because there isn't. There's a problem with three people, and those people directly need to know it. And I recommend copying Stu as board president so he knows which people are. I'm not telling you have to, expose it to everybody, but he's the president.
Yeah, Susan, if you can send those three people an email when we're done and
And I'll
copy
copy
me.
you on that, but
Yeah.
anyone can see who it is just by looking at the link.
That was
Well-
going to be my point. Look at the link. It's highlighted in yellow, what's missing, and just
I
fill it
don't-
in.
Jeff, I don't know why it kept removing you. I put an X there and I'll redo the whole thing if it disappears again. But it wasn't on there any of the times that I checked.
I believe you. When you resent it back to me, I saw it wasn't there. I checked it again, and then I even checked save the which it's supposed to do automatically. So
So
the
I'll
fact is,
make sure that gets taken care of.
you now
Okay.
know I am
Okay.
self-employed.
Okay, thank you. Anything else in Susan on your report that you want to call to our attention or need action on?
Just kind of, I'm usually really pretty sure about numbers I put in, and I've had a good history of meeting my numbers for both income and expenses. This year, the political landscape has me really worried because I have a lot of friends that are going to be committing a substantial amount of discretionary income to political things. So there's nothing the board can do, but I might be looking to involve the board, not in committing any of their own income, but into projects that would be useful to me to help secure income. So I will be preparing those for the next report.
Do we have historic data that shows a correlation between significant election years and fundraising levels?
There's national data. For myself, my own experience. We've been, since Scott Walker, we have been the national data says, are you going to be a state that's in play? We're in play constantly because of the fact that we're
Okay.
purple. So yes, we have some data. That the stuff from pretty much July on gets very tough for us, and I do kind of load the back end to make sure we have money to send out letters and other stuff to counteract, to be more persistent against the fact that. Now, God help us if Trump gets elected, that is good for our fundraising. Terrible for the country, but good for our fundraising. The people in our area hated when he got elected. We got a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, well, once we're all in jail, we're not going to be doing radio. So,
Or in Canada.
yeah, I mean, it's, but that's for another day. Okay. Then anything else, Susan?
Nope, I'm just saying for the next meeting, I'll have a list of things
Okay.
that the board to be involved in this year, since
Okay.
there hasn't been much involvement with the board in fundraising.
Okay, thank you. And there were no comments or questions about Sybil's report. Aaron's report looked really good. I mean, I got the sense that there's a lot of exciting things happening in his field. I mean, between the video and the live stuff, and I mean that I just got a sense of exciting things happening from his report. Anybody have any questions, comments on anything in his report? Seeing none, same question regarding Shali's report. I'm very impressed with how much money the Journalism Collaborative has raised. I mean, that's exciting. Was that does that fill the full nut, or how's that compare with what the budget was?
We're still waiting to hear from the Willie Street Co-op.
Okay.
Unity
Yeah.
grant. We've asked for 4,000 from that.
Yeah.
And Shali had a late request to me to find funds for, she said a lot of people are ruled out because they have children and they can't afford childcare. So she's asked me to fundraise around giving people money to pay for childcare. I don't know exactly how that'll work, but I'm going to fundraise for it. So it's in the
Okay.
budget currently.
Okay, thank you. Then seeing nothing else, anything on Adrian's report that anyone wants to call attention to or comment on? Okay. I keep getting these strange error prompts. Seeing none, okay. Then that's it for staff reports. Oh, the agenda just got funky. Why did the agenda just get? Okay. Something strange has happened to the agenda. Committee and work group reports. Boy, something strange just happened to my copy of the agenda. I don't know.
No, it's everybody. Somebody copied and pasted something into there
Yeah.
by mistake, I assume. It wasn't there 2 minutes ago because I've been scrolling down with it. So somebody accidentally, that's the problem with the shared document.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, somehow it's Adrian's report got linked in. Okay, we'll just skip on that. Any report, oh, there we go. Any report from DEI? No. Policies and bylaws continues to meet. We're making great progress, and I'm hopeful we'll have a document that is ready to go. We're making good progress. Personnel committee, we have agreed upon documents for the evaluation process. We have documents for staff to do self-evaluation, for part-timers, and for volunteers to do evaluations. The union, Nate agreed with our response that we're going to require part-timers and strongly encourage volunteers. We were worried about what would happen if we required volunteers to do so. The one thing that we have not, there's a slight division of opinion on the personnel committee as to how much time we should allow people to complete the evaluations. I thought maybe 3 weeks. Jeff and Phil thought 10 days would be more appropriate. I'd like to give people at least 2 weekends to do something, especially if they're if people have jobs and there's sometimes you leave to weekends. So can we say 2 weeks after receipt? Is that acceptable to people? I'm seeing a general consensus. And what's going to happen is I will write a cover letter, which I'll run by the personnel committee, explaining what the process, what the document is, and why we're asking / requiring people to fill it out. And then we will start scheduling meetings. But that should be done. We should have a return date prior to the beginning of the pledge drive to get that out of the way before the pledge drive. So that's the plan on that. Does anybody have any questions about that aspect of where personnel committee is at on the evaluations? Okay, I think that was something of an accomplishment to get that done. Any reports from any of the other, from programming, elections, or the CAB? Dan?
I think that elections should congratulate Doug on really, doing an organized and methodical job with this last election. It was like as smooth a process as could possibly go. Thank you so much.
Okay. Here. Laura? You're muted.
I'm sorry. I think I'm the one who messed up the agenda, by the way, so my apologies for that. I wanted to speak about the DEI committee, so that's if everyone else is through with their reports. I want to resume meetings. DEI has been inactive over the holidays, and so just a heads up for people who are on the committee. I'll try to get a meeting scheduled before the next board meeting. Susan has dropped out of the committee, but I'm working with Susan to get the survey out as the last action of the work group. So that's the report from the DEI committee.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Laura on that? Okay, seeing none. Well, we're down to the only thing we've got left now is we're back to the mural project, and we do not yet have Patrick. So Phil, you're back up. Or would people like to talk about the retreat concept and until Patrick joins us? Let's do that then. Doug and I have exchanged some correspondence, and staff has had at least one, maybe two meetings to discuss this. I put the document from staff in the folder because, like Phil, I don't know how to attach the documents to the agenda either. I thought it was a good start. There are both logistic and substance issues to resolve. The staff is requesting that we do this after the pledge drive, which seems like a reasonable request. We could, I think the pledge drive ends like March 10th, I think is the date. Susan, is that right? March 10th, somewhere around there. So perhaps if we targeted the next weekend, the next Saturday or Sunday, as the target date to do that. Hang on just one second, Jeff. The questions we have to resolve are in person or virtually, on site, if in person, on site or off site, and the facilitator. I think given that Phil is obviously going to be virtual, and I know Susan requested virtual, I think things can be more productive and efficient if everyone's in the same room. But if that's impractical and we can do the hybrid, that's acceptable. I think the timing of March, the weekend after the pledge drive ends, is acceptable. As to the facilitator, I think many of you may be familiar with Jeff Burkhart, who used to run the Literacy Network and is now has got a startup that does board training. I think he'd be great. I'm certainly willing to hear other suggestions. I know the staff has discussed Jeff as a possibility, but those are three logistic issues to discuss before. Oh, and the other question is, if it is on a weekend, is staff in pay status? So those are four logistic questions that I think we can resolve before we get into the guts of the substance of things. Dean?
First easy one, staff is definitely getting paid. The question of, I was wondering why they didn't want to have the part-time staff there. I think they should be. The hybrid seems to be working well. As this will work a whole lot better and much more efficient, I think, if we do it in person with the option for those who cannot get zoomed in. And as far as the date, that's fine. And there are, as far as Mr. Burkhart, I don't know him. There are others, but we should, maybe the executive committee can meet on that and decide that quickly, because I don't know what these guys' dates are like. And it should be a weekend. And then we're going to have to really discuss the agenda. I like having everything in front of me, and then you can subtract out what is appropriate for this type of meeting, and perhaps and the other things for another time that I saw today in the discussion. So the agenda should be made, I think, in boards usually set the agenda on these items with input from everybody. And then the facilitator needs to be involved in not so much agenda development, but once we decide the agenda, then we bring that person in so that they can organize it in a way that will be efficient and on point. Those
Okay.
are suggestions.
Thank you. Laura?
I think the agenda and who sets it is a really important point, and I think that we need to decide that as soon as possible. I wanted to mention something of a technical nature, and that is the hybrid is a difficult thing to do properly, especially the sound in the room. You know, we're at the station or wherever we're going to have the real members. So anyways, I just if we might have to rent equipment, or we might have to find a room with a good you know, with good Zoom equipment. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. I don't think right now, even with Tom's assurances, I don't think right now that WORT has equipment that's up to the task.
Okay, thank you. Susan?
We have a finance committee that meets virtually and in person, Laura, and Tom has fine-tuned that. I'm one of the virtual people, and I hear everything clear as a bell. I was very skeptical of how that was going to work, but it's in the library, the vinyl library, and I feel like I'm right in person there. I can see everyone. I can hear everyone clearly. He had tried things before, but now I think he has it down. So I just want to say that I experienced the virtual part of the meeting. I'm one of the only ones, and I think it's amazing.
Okay, that hasn't been my experience.
Okay.
This is recent, so what if you want to have anything that's dual, just make sure Tom knows, and especially if we're using the vinyl library, he's got it down.
Okay, Dan has, this is unsigned, it says West Madison, but since it refers to the Overture Boardroom, I assume it is from Dan, volunteering the Overture Boardroom for us. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, so the Overture Boardroom is under the command center schedules Overture, and we sometimes have it go out to groups for, you can rent it at a regular price, and if they asked us to pay money, I would get a staff discount because I work there. But they frequently give it to groups to use for free because Overture, who underwrites for us already, it does things. We've got a big, I want to say it's a 95-inch monitor, what width to Zoom with. It's a nice room. And most of the time when we do things like let people eat lunch in there. And so like when Forward Theater's rehearsing, Forward goes in there to eat Chipotle, you know, and so yeah, so if we felt like it was a skillful idea, we could book that room either at a staff rate or perhaps for free if we wrote a nice letter.
And it's got the capability to do the hybrid meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Doug?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of echo what Susan said, and the real reason that the ability of the vinyl library to host a meeting of this type has improved is because Tom purchased a multi-directional speaker that sits in the center of the table. So anybody speaking is picked up totally perfectly by the people who are online. So I appreciate Dan's offer, but I think we have our own good space that would suit us fine.
Okay.
Patrick's here.
Yeah, I see that. We'll finish this discussion and then turn to Laura and then Jeff.
I just wanted to say, all right, I was not aware of the new equipment, so my comment, just disregard my comment.
Okay. I think there's no harm in Dan at least finding out what the process would be if we wanted to use Overture, because there's sometimes people recommend you do these kinds of things off site, because you get for a variety of reasons, and I get some acknowledgement on that point. Jeff, you got your hand up?
Yeah. So on that last point, just quickly, I don't think we should pay for another room, but if we have an adequate room, but if we can get it for free, as Dan is thinking we might, then there's a lot to be recommended for having a neutral space, a new space, which is the same reason that although I do understand that some people, for some reasons, legitimate, not disparaging this, may need to be on Zoom, I think we should strongly encourage both board and staff to be there in person. I cannot underestimate how little I feel I know most of you, because most of you I have never met face to face. Now, that may be a generational thing. I don't know. But if we're going to have a real serious retreat, which means heart to heart, then number one, I would say those who are on Zoom cannot hide their faces. You would not be able to hide your face if you were there in person. Again, not talking about this meeting, I'm talking about a retreat. And that while we should set up for those who absolutely must appear by Zoom for health or other reasons, I think it should just be hopefully a very small number of people. For that same reason, we should hopefully get as close to 100% of attendance as possible. I put in the chat, I am not available those following 2 weekends in March. I like Jay's idea. Let's get a Google Calendar or something, doodle poll, whatever, out there for the following few weekends and see which weekend. And I would recommend putting a specific time. My personal vote is for Sunday afternoon, but if people like other times on the weekend, I don't really care. Just not too early, not too late. And let's see which weekend day specific. I'm going to also, we haven't discussed this, recommend a 4-hour time period. I think less than that, you're not giving yourself enough time in a real retreat. More than that, people just get exhausted and they're not thinking anymore. If people want to meet again afterwards, that I'm sure Jeff will incorporate that into, if it's Jeff or any good facilitator at the end. So that's pretty much what I have to say on the logistics of it.
Okay, thank you. Doug, can you create that doodle poll for people to create a schedule?
Did you ask me? It
Yeah.
was me you asked. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of
Yeah. Can you create that doodle poll to pick a date?
I mean, I haven't made a doodle poll before, but I'm sure.
Okay. Well, let me rephrase the question. Doug, as the staff member on the board, would you see what staff member is able to most efficiently create that doodle poll to come up with a date?
Oh no, I'm being silly. I'm sure I can figure it out, Stu. I'm Gen X.
Okay. Dean and then Laura.
We have to decide if it's part-time staff as well. The collectives said only full-time. I'm for all staff.
Okay. Doug, can you explain the collective's thinking on that?
I can.
No. I mean, Doug is the board. Doug is on the board.
Yeah, and I'm happy to respond to that. I mean, the part-time staff's jobs are very specific duties related to specific departments. The things that we're going to be discussing at a retreat are mostly about organizational structure of the company, especially in how the staff collective and the board relate to each other. I don't know that it's appropriate for the people we supervise to be in on that conversation when their jobs are not about the overreaching day-to-day operations of the station like they are for the 7 of us. I mean, one of the part-time staff is a custodian. One of them does the books. You know, one of them like works in the news department, and their only job is to produce the evening news. I think they would see it as a waste of their time. And I don't know, I kind of feel like it's between the staff collective and the board, really. I mean, I don't see how the topics would be relevant to part-time staff.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Laura and then Dean.
I wanted to let the part-time staff discussion play out before I
Okay,
talk about
okay.
my stuff.
Okay, Dean, did you want to get on the part-time staff aspect?
Yeah. Yeah, I hired people for part-time work. And it was a nonprofit, mission-driven program that I was running. Just like WORT, it's a mission-driven program, and I wanted everyone to work there to get the big picture, understand the mission, and at some point, they might be in a position where they had to do something that represented WORT or my other program, and I wanted them to get the full understanding of what their position was, even if it was a custodian. My maintenance people were often, some were put in positions of being first responders, and I had to give them mental health training and stuff so that they understood who they were dealing with. They had more contact with our clients than our case managers did. So I think at any job, anywhere, I wanted to see the big picture. And so my idea of they can decide if they want to come, but I think that anyone who's part of WORT is in some capacity of getting paid or on a board should be there. Not all volunteers. This is just board paid staff.
Okay, Susan, Doug, Jeff.
I guess I don't understand why you're drawing the line between, I don't agree that part-time should be there. I think they're supervised by staff. I think that we are in charge of conveying information to them. I never think, I have no sign that there's anything that is a problem with the part-time staff feeling that they're being left out of the loop. They were offered to go to staff meetings. They decided not to go. We offered it. I just think if you're going to have part-time staff there, then have volunteers. A lot of them have a lot more, more interest in what's happening than our part-time staff does. So
that would be entirely unworkable. Doug, then Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that our part-time staff are onboarded very well with a full understanding of the organization's mission and values. That is definitely a part of the onboarding process for any part-time staff member. So
Okay.
in case there was any question there.
Jeff.
I think what Susan said about the way the staff was invited to but chose not to attend the staff meeting is how we should handle this retreat. We should set the date. In other words, not include them in the doodle poll for the date, but then let them know that it's happening, and if they'd like to attend, they're welcome. And I think that so if there's somebody who, I don't care if they're the janitor, if Lois really has something to say about how the station is run, I'd like to hear it. My guess is she's not going to show up, and that's fine. And I think that's a good balance of, what I'm hearing from people who both want them there or think they don't need to be there.
Doug, how would the collective regard that suggestion?
I think that's a fine way to approach it myself. Because, maybe some will be interested. But I don't think that I mean, there's an inviting and then there's requiring. I think an invitation to part-time staff is fine. Because much like in our collective, you never know where those best ideas are going to come from. And, that's one of the strengths of the staff collective is that we shoot things around the table in staff meetings, and we always end up with a solution that was better than any of us could have thought on our own. And that's part of the strength of it. And I think extending that to part-time in this respect, I think is good in offering that invitation.
Okay. Do we have a consensus on that then? Has anybody got a problem with inviting but not requiring. And presumably the pay status would apply to them as well,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna chime in on.
which will
Oh, for
probably
sure.
may make them more likely to come. We'll see. Okay, so we've resolved that. We're going to get a doodle poll sent out to pick a time. How do you want to approach the issue of A, choosing the facilitator, and B, coming up with the agenda? You just have continued back and forth between the collective and executive committee and bring something back to the board, hopefully at the February meeting. Jeff?
Yeah, I was gonna say that works for me.
Okay.
We need to get a price from Jeff. I'd like to think he's reasonable, but you never know. And Madison actually is full of very good facilitators. I have some people in mind too, but I'm fine with Jeff. No problem with Jeff at all.
And remember, I mean, Jeff is familiar with the station because he volunteers, he's a musician, and
Yeah.
so I think, yeah. Doug and then Dean.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, as far as an agenda for the meeting, if the board would like to propose an agenda and then run it by Nate and the collective, knowing the types of brainstorming topics that the staff came up with. And I think picking from those, the ones that you feel are important. And then if you would like to propose an agenda, and then the staff could respond to that proposal, if that works for you.
Okay. Dean and then Jeff.
Yeah,
And we'll get to you, Laura, eventually. We will get to you. Or did you want to get in on this? I mean, Laura's had her hand up for the longest. Did you want to get in on this?
I specifically wanted to talk about the agenda,
Okay,
as well as the length of time that we're going to need, to put on the schedule to accomplish an agenda. So yeah, you can work your way back to me.
Okay. Then Dean, Laura, Jeff.
Yeah, I think before we adjourn tonight, we have to assign responsibilities of who is going to review the facilitators and make the offer. And then also who is going to develop the agenda. I think if we just leave it, unorganized and unassigned, it we'll be going through emails back and forth. It's going to be too long. So a committee should be established.
Well, I think it's the executive committee, and that means the primary people are then me and Doug, and we will.
But let's just state it out loud so that we know who's responsible.
Doug and I will take responsibility for bringing something. I mean, we've already begun the process. Staff has had a couple of meetings. That document is in. I mean, that's a good start. And Doug, do you think? I think probably choosing the facilitator also has to be a joint decision. As opposed to the board unilaterally.
I mean, ultimately, it's always the best if we all agree on something.
Yeah. Would people, am I authorized to get a quote from Jeff Burkhart on what he would charge to do a weekend facilitation of X hours to at least start the process?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It never hurts to get information.
Okay, and and the fact that I expressed it as X hours brings us now to Laura to comment on what she sees as the time necessary.
Yeah, I just wanted to establish, are we talking about 2 days? Or one day for the retreat?
I think we're talking about a day. Does anybody, Doug, I mean, I think it's a day. I think it's a day of probably, a good afternoon, a good morning, 4 hours or so.
Okay, not an 8-hour day, a 4-hour day, a half a day.
Yeah, but the floor is open for.
The reason
course.
that I'm wondering about how we're going to structure this, and it helps to know how big our bucket is before we start making an agenda. And also, I think we're going to need some feedback from the facilitator. We can't just have a wide open agenda and then just sort of dump that on our facilitator. We got to see what he or she is comfortable working with us on.
Okay.
So just wanted to throw those out there.
Let's take this one step at a time. Show of hands, how many people think this is a 1 day of X hours as opposed to 2 days? Who thinks this is a one and done? Okay, so we're talking about 1 day. Is 4 hours within people's comfort? Is 4 hours enough to get stuff done? Now, Phil says, what about 6 with a lunch break? And Tanya is nodding in an affirmative manner. A 6-hour day with a lunch break?
I think it would give time to relax and enjoy each other's company possibly, but just have downtime, maybe give a break for people who need a break.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention what Jeff was talking about, kind of the social aspect, getting to know each other. A lunch break would certainly be helpful.
Okay. Okay. Are people, oh, Ms. Pittman has joined us. Are people, so I'll ask Jeff about a 6-hour weekend day with a lunch break. What
Sure.
is that? I'm seeing affirmative. Okay. Okay. See, we're making progress. And Doug and I will continue to, well, I think we'll get the executive committee together to come up with here's what we think the agenda should be. Staff, now and give it to staff and make it an iterative process. Does that work for people? I'm seeing affirmative notions. Jeffrey appears to be seeking recognition.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I agree with Laura on this, that while I think it's a good way to go back and forth, executive committee, Doug and the staff, to hopefully craft, and it helps that we now are talking about, I don't know how long the lunch break will be, but let's just say 5-ish hours of work, probably closer to 4.5 once people trickle in, that kind of thing tends to happen in the beginning, and maybe there'll be some get to know you things in the beginning. So that'll help for the doodle poll too. But I think it's really important for whoever's facilitating it, be it Jeff or otherwise, to have, like, we give them, here are the things we're thinking about being in the agenda. And if they're good at what they do, and like you say, Jeff knows WRT, he will either say, yeah, that looks doable, or are you kidding me? There's no way you're getting through that in 6 hours. You have to pare it down. So it's really important that we not just kind of plop, oh, this is it, facilitator, like it or lump it. And if you don't like it, we'll find somebody else.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I think we've got the next steps ahead, and we'll get the executive committee together. Doug will set out a poll. I'll contact Jeff, and we'll look for something in late March, early April is our target to get this done and to make this happen. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, I think that was some progress. And now we're ready to return to the discussion of the mural. Patrick, thanks for joining us. It actually had been put up higher on the agenda, but then when I realized that we had other stuff to talk about and that you were going to be coming back later, we held it off. So Phil made some preliminary comments, but I turn it over to you now to make your report, and anything else. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Stu. Did people get the report? I didn't see it. Phil, you sent me a copy of the agenda, but I didn't I didn't see the report link. I was just wondering if people had a chance to read it. Show of hands, who's able to read it? So a good number of folks. Okay. There's one overarching kind of question. I added one big rambling question up front on this, and then there's three different areas that we really focused on lately. There's as we look ahead to basically there's 3/4 of this year to do this project. There's this quarter, which will be a lot of the artistic work. There's and fundraising is really at a critical point where we have to bring money in. So before I get to the overarching point, I'll just touch very briefly on the three areas. The artistic side, one of the things that really came out of our team is to get a detailed schedule on this, and that's reproduced. That's in Shali's report. Shali, chime in if you like. The team, everybody on this board had an opportunity to review the call to artists document before. It'll come out any day now. And the other thing that really held this up is really to put something in the public domain with this. And I just came from the 4th Ward lofts, and that was one of the questions that they asked. We'll put something in our minutes. We can't give money, but we can pass the word on to everybody else that lives here. A lot of people have approached me about donations, individuals that don't normally donate here, but a link. This is the second or third time I've heard people say, send me a link, tell me more. So that's the artistic side. Is really it's led us to the timeline, which is pretty well anchored on this side. But funding, one of the questions that we came out with is, the scope of the project. I'm sorry, was it Shali? Do you want to chime in? I just saw your box light up around there. The frame around your name there. Funding, I'll just touch on this very briefly. We had a really good, thanks to the people that provided connections on this. Findorf and Alexander Company both donated $2,500 and offered to be references so we can use their names in funding pursuits elsewhere. So we've got about 20 different letters out right now, and we're doing follow-up on those. The question that nobody has asked me here is, what if you don't have enough money? What if you have just the right amount of money? And what if you have too much money? And which would be a wonderful problem to have, but it gets into the scope aspects of this project. When the team kind of had a question asked amongst us, is this a mural project or is it a building exterior project? For the facade grant, we have the opportunity to have 50% off on anything we do on the exterior. But do we have the money to do that? Do we have the ability to coordinate that? I mean, this is Tom Jones's area, where Tom has several different projects on a wish list, some of which really ought to be put in. One is critical, has to be put in this scope, and that is to paint the exterior of the building before we put a mural on it. Some of the things that, he's put them all down for 2025, but when I met with him separately before this meeting, he said, well, if we had the money and the board was okay with it, well, we could do it. We could do it this year instead of, have it on the wish list for later. So this is kind of the question that I have for the board here. How big should this scope be? I thought this should be $100,000 because, well, it's 40,000 match. You have raise another 40. So you've got 80. And then there's the items that don't fall into the matchable scope. So 10, 20,000, something like that. But am I going to run this? The non-scope items? Can I order windows or things? It really comes to Tom. And does he have room on his plate for that? Do you want to put a mural on this building and then put windows in later? Or, I mean, that doesn't seem to make sense. You've got some key things. So I'll read you the question. Anybody have any clarifications before we call it? Yeah. Jeff?
Well, the way I think
we're not going to be calling the question, but we're going to be.
it's a
But
question.
actually,
Patrick
Dean
asked
and
if
Laura,
anybody-
Dean and Laura had their hands up.
True. Yeah, fine. I don't know why you call on me. Go ahead. I didn't go first. I don't care.
Yeah, Dean.
Okay, years ago, an artist friend and I were having drinks at the Harmony, and the entire conversation was how much canvas prep he puts in before he started a painting. So it was extraordinary. It was really enlightening to the amount of thought that got put into the frame, and he makes his own frames. I mean, this really involved stuff, and it was like, it's like, holy shit, yeah. So from thinking like that, the perspective of looking at our building as the frame, and the frame prep that has to be made to put a proper piece of art on it, we can't be doing tuck pointing after the thing is done. There will be cement in the middle, then we'll have to repaint it over that. It's canvas prep. So from that kind of perspective, with the artist in conjunction with the condition of the building as the frame, as the canvas, we look at it like that, then that might be a little bit easier way of answering these types of questions when this isn't just building improvement, it's canvas prep.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, if you want this mural to last, you definitely have to tuck point and prime the surface beneath it. The other thing that I think came up early in the discussion was the downspout that runs diagonally across one side of the building, and whether or not we wanted to put in a rain gutter that would eliminate that downspout from crossing through an entire side of the building, and then after that, things just kind of pile up. But I think that the tuck pointing and the downspout are probably requirements to do the bare minimum. In other words, I've talked a lot with Tom, probably to his dismay. Spent way too many hours talking about these kinds of things. I think he'd like to get as much done out of the budget as possible, but yeah, we could spend a lot of money, especially when we start talking about things like windows. I don't necessarily think that he's looking to get new windows out of this, but maybe you know something more than I do, Patrick. But at the bare minimum, the tuck pointing and the downspout are probably necessary. So the question that you're asking, I'm a little curious. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking for with the question. Could you clarify what it is you're asking of the board tonight?
The basic question that I'm asking here is how to handle additional scope in this project. The original group was formed as a mural group. So now we have a larger scope here and an opportunity for a larger scope to take advantage of 50%, 100% matching or half off, right? Some of these things you ought to be done. And I guess when I look at this project, and we need to do this in 2024, I think just because of the personnel that are all involved in this. And if we're going to do something like windows, that's in a future budget. I mean, this board would have to make a decision or approve what is beyond the scope of simply the mural. And when I look at Tom's list, do you have that list? Have you seen his wish list? Mary Joy and Tom shared it with me.
I have seen a wish list. I don't know if it's the same one.
Well, there's basically 4 items on it, and a fifth or sixth, I think the team would like, but exterior prep is one of them at $20,000. That's basically your tuck pointing, whatever you got to do, chiseling things out, repainting, just putting a whole new base coat on there that the mural would support. The roof is one thing that I think is probably in worse shape than anything out there, but that's outside of the scope of this, except for perhaps to clean it up a bit. There's a lot of debris. There's junk up there that's people that didn't have a place to store. The gutters, he's put in at about 10,000 to reroute some of that. Should that be in there? That diagonal gutter or downspout that nobody likes is, that's on a side of the building where there's probably not going to be a lot of painting done, because that next building, it's essentially just like an alleyway there. I would not want to spend a whole lot of money on a mural to do that, but you ought to be doing the gutter or the downspout. And the other one is the windows. That's at $12,000 is what he estimated. He said maybe that's going to run a little higher, but basically the exterior prep, the gutters, and the downspouts at least you'd have to do. The windows, and there's another thing here is lighting, and this has to do with security and also to highlight the art in a proper manner, which is another $3,000 to $6,000, which was not on Tom's list, but really probably ought to be.
So if I might suggest real quick, the downspout / gutter, that's really only one thing, because when you do one, you're going to do the other. And then the surface prep, which would be tuck pointing and priming. Those are necessary for the mural. Anything else is superfluous. I think the only thing we really need to talk about tonight would be, are the downspout and gutter and the surface prep part of this? Are they within the scope? That's it. Thank you.
Susan?
The reason why Tom has those on the wish list and not in the budget for this year is because the budget for this year doesn't balance if you put them on this year's thing. We talked about it at length, what needed to be in the budget, what needed to be budgeted for. And Tom said this stuff can all wait for another year or even another year past that. Nothing is pressing. So I just want to acknowledge that if these things get added in as expenses that the board approves, you're going to be and that's totally your prerogative, but you're going to be going into the reserves for that. It won't be part of the budget. That's all. I'm still doubtful we're going to be able to afford all the things we already have in the budget. So just an acknowledgement. I'm happy that it gets a 2-to-1. I think that the roof is the thing that is the major concern of Tom's. It's $30,000. That's the thing that he is most concerned about. He can be at the next meeting to discuss it. He has worries that it's going to last beyond the next year or two. So I think fixing gutters and doing the tuck pointing is done. He doesn't want to talk about it anymore. The only place that needed it was the chimney. It's done. We don't need any more tuck pointing. We can quit talking about that. But if you really want to know what's important and talk to Tom about it at the next meeting, it's the roof, which is covered in this 2-to-1, by the way.
Shali?
Hi. So I didn't quite catch that Patrick would bring us to the board. but I understand where he's coming from. He sent it out on Monday. Should have caught that. This is sort of coming out of a recent meeting that we had, where we're trying to finalize the call for artists and decide on final language. And, I think I understand why Patrick wants to ask about windows and other things, because some of that we do need to be able to give to an artist about. It was pointed out to us that artists are not architects, and that we need to be able to give them, here are the windows, here's the railing, here's the signage, and here's the lighting that we kind of expect to do. And that was mentioned, that comes out of the meeting that we had this summer with the city, when we were talking about the facade grant, and the city said, we want answers to all of those things in your application, and your application does not contain those. So include them in your next application. As for what we want, like, I think the board, the mural committee, the staff can decide all of that. And that's why these things are coming up. But I did point out to the mural committee that as of right now, like, this is not a question, because this is not within our purview. Our purview is to get the mural done, which is already a gigantic project, and we're bearing down on the timeline. The timeline to get this out was yesterday, and frankly, it's a lot of staff, my work, for this part. And I know everyone is doing other stuff. I know there's fundraising Patrick and Jonathan are doing, which is awesome. So, but I wanted to kind of stay tightly focused on what we need to even submit the application, which is the artist process, which is going to dominate the next 3 months. I think the board has a little bit of time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, has a little time to decide the purview on this. We haven't talked to Tom. Tom did come and talk to us last summer. We talked about windows, and when we were going through the budget process, I tried to, maybe I was unclear, tried to explain that, the windows are frequently on the budget for WORT, and they're one of the first things to go, and we're trying to balance it. And so on the one hand, I can sort of see where we'd want to go, and including that in the facade grant. But I do have concerns about mission creep here. It's already a huge accomplishment to do the necessary tuck pointing on the, Jeff says, nobody is suggesting. I guess what I'm suggesting, Jeff, is that this is going to take additional staff time to do, and it really does fall on the staff to figure this stuff out, because, no one's talked to Tom, and he's the one who's going to have to do all this. And so I do think that, and by the way, we're meeting as a group, and we only have so much time to manage everyone's schedules. And so it actually does detract the artistic selection process, because the time that we should be spending talking about the artist selection and these like precise language questions that we disagree about, we're spending now talking about windows, when we talked about windows in the summer. So that's kind of just where I'm coming from. Patrick, you can definitely correct me on anything there, but I think we should talk to Tom. It's definitely within the board's purview. And I'll also people keep talking about tuck pointing. As Susan said, most of the tuck pointing is done. There's a small amount that needs to be done this spring on the exterior, so that as Jeff, so that when we prime it, we don't have to go in and add the tuck pointing, because then that doesn't make any sense. So we don't destroy the mural. I do think we've kind of considered this before and talked about why windows can be a separate project that we can fundraise for. I am sort of concerned about mission creep here. We need the downspout if we want to address that, as one of you said. Just know that the city wants to know what our plans are for these external things, but the group as it has been formed has not been charged with that. So Another avenue to go down would be to ask our facilities director for any necessary improvements that we do need, right? And maybe have him manage some of those things if he has the capacity in his schedule. He has several major projects this year. But, you know, it's a way to pay for it. I also, I mean, we only have 8 more meetings before this mural has to be done. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey and then Laura.
So, I understood 2 completely different things that seem not to have been discussed, as I heard from Patrick. One is that there's an opportunity to have somebody else, I think the city, pay for 50% of these costs. So should we try to get as much of that matched by the city as possible? Speaking purely as a board member who has fiscal responsibility for this corporation, it seems like that's an obvious thing to try to do. Now, how it gets managed, Shelley's completely right. I would not suggest that the people managing the artistic portion of this project also manage the tuck pointing and the downspout and the windows. It's completely different skill sets. And Shelley's already pointed out the staff person, Tom, who would be in charge and need to be consulted about that. Patrick also asked a question right at the beginning of his presentation, of which we haven't discussed at all, but it's critical and is absolutely related to this discussion on what should we build into the, I'll call it the large project, okay? Which we could get a 50% discount on, you know, which is not insignificant, folks. Which is, what if we don't raise enough money, or what if we raise too much? Well, the raise too much is a no-brainer. It's a donation to WORT, folks. Period. End of story. In my opinion, the raise not enough gets to, okay, what are the priorities? I think there should be steps in this budget. Okay, so mural number 1, get that funded. Downspouts number 2, and I'm just making this up, by the way. Tuck pointing number 3, or maybe that's inversed. Windows number 4. I mean, if we actually, and I actually think that part of the pitch to donors could include, listen, we're going to have a brand spanking new, beautiful building on the outside. And that's a value to the city, to the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I don't know how convincing that is, but it might convince some people to pony up some money. So managing it, critical. Shelley, I couldn't agree with you more. Not suggesting that we should overtax staff in a way that can't be handled. But raising the money, you know what? We don't have to put a deadline on when the windows get in, by the way, you know?
Okay, Shelley, did you want to respond to that?
Can I just ask, I mean, is it, Patrick, you would probably know the answer to this, or anyone who was at that meeting with the city. I don't know if there's any limitation on applying again, and or a limitation on raising the funds in the future, right? I understand that it's reimbursable, but as Susan said, we were still responsible for half of that money. And if we want to apply for this year, that's not budgeted. So I'm not sure that it actually is a good financial move. I understand you can get 50% of it refunded, but you know, there are other avenues to raising money for necessary repairs. I am a little concerned about adding too much to one bucket to do in 8 months.
Yeah. First off, I really, Shelley, everything you're doing to lead the artistic front in this is tremendous value. And just working through this, I mean, that's one separate area. And I would hope that you would not have to worry about the scope creep. I mean, the other items that are in this scope, I think that's really what I really come to the realization is that's a Tom Jones question. When I asked him, I said, could you do this if you had the money? And he said, yeah, if we had the money. He said, we just put soundboards in. You know how much money I've gone through here? He said, I don't want to ask for more money. And that makes sense. So my question that I asked people, and I mean, I didn't read the whole rambling question, but should this scope be included, be broadened to include WR facilities, execute other facade grant items, qualifying items, if matching funds can be raised by the end of this quarter. So I'm willing to say that this is a critical quarter, and if we can raise the money, then we should go for it. And we should, like Jeff said, we could prioritize these things. Susan, the letter that we sent out that you reviewed, you had all of those items in there, all of these wish list things. These are going out to the people. These are going out to businesses all over town, and they're going to go out to a lot more people. So people understand that we're trying to get that scope. Our budget has been from the very start 0 for this project. Everything has to be raised separately and not impact the station, the operations of the station. So that's kind of how we've treated this. But now with these other items, it's a bit of a gray area. Do you want to, would you put new windows in if you could get, pay for a quarter of them and have people, this is a possibility. And one of the reasons you got to think that way is the way this is reimbursed. We don't get anything from the city until we finish the project completely. That's a very important thing about how we're going to fund this. So WORT will have to come up with some cash that you'll get back, and hopefully the balance would be 100% fundraise.
How much? How much do we have to, because as Shally noted, this is not in the budget. So how much money are you talking about? And is this all independently raised apart from the existing budget?
The numbers that the matching grant is up, their amount is, I'm going to build this number out for everyone once again, is the matching grant is up to $20,000 per street times 2 streets. That's $40,000.
And that matching grant covers the entirety of that's the extent of what they'll provide.
40,000 is their cap, and we would have to raise another 40. But if you want to do a drain that's not facing Doty or Bedford Street, that's not part of the facade. So you got 40,000 from the city, 40,000 for anything you want to do on Doty and Bedford. That's 80,000 total. You got some downspouts, things that don't face that, or paint that is not facing those 2 streets. Well, then that's an extra, that's where I come out with the other 20. So that's roughly why you come out with $100,000. That's where I'm coming out with that. And you had a second question too, Stu.
I'm sorry?
You had a 2-part question.
Yeah, well, I'm still not entirely clear how much is just the mural and how much is the mural plus?
If you have the prep to put the mural out and really do the entire outside is estimated at $20,000 to do all 4 walls. The mural itself, based on scaling off of information from DAMA, is around $30,000. But that depends a lot on what we get from the artists. So I'm a little hesitant to share with artists, hey, we got $30,000, because they'll say, hey, I can do a job for $30,000. I'd rather say, this is what we want to paint. This is the area What have you done elsewhere? What do you think of this? Qualify your answer all you like. This is what I would like to go out to. But I'm willing to be flexible on that. And this is one of the hangups we've had with the call to artists.
Yeah. Okay. Laura, Susan, Phil.
So I was trying to say, when I was speaking previously on this, I was trying to say that we should really do the minimum we need to accomplish the mural. I don't think we have the rest of it in the budget. We're talking about facades. How does the roof come into this? I doubt that we could use any of that grant for the roof.
No, zero, because it does
yeah,
not, I'm sorry
okay.
to interrupt, but it doesn't face those two.
Exactly. So I'm not even sure how that entered into the conversation. The railing possibly, but the only reason that was brought in is because it affects the way the mural is going to be painted if we put in a new railing. Is that what's happening, Patrick?
The railing wasn't even in the scope in what
okay. But windows were?
Yes.
Okay. And replacement of the windows, would that be within that $40,000 grant?
I think it might be a good idea here for me to share my screen on
okay.
this. Let's see if I've got this straight. Grant funding, team cost
Laura,
estimate.
My point, yeah.
Could I interject, Laura?
Okay.
We currently, the mural project has not devised a budget. The mural project has raised $5,000, approximately a little bit more, from non-phone call-in donations, from outside donations that are not cannibalizing any of our regular fundraising pledge drive sources.
Mm-hmm.
And
we have the rest of the quarter to add to that. Is that correct?
I mean, effectively, we have until the project is finished and we submit a bill to the city saying, here is what we have done. And we are asking for 50% reimbursement based on the grant that we applied for in April or whenever the deadline is.
But we could if we come up short, we'll be on the hook for it.
My personal answer to that, if we come up short, I think we just scale back the scope of the project. I think we work with the artist and say, well, okay, when we hired you, it was on the assumption that we were going to raise X amount of money. We were not able to raise X amount of money. So we'd like you to simplify the design that you're painting on the building. That's my personal take on it. I guess I don't know that we have entertained that contingency.
I'm not so worried about the art and the artist. What I'm concerned about are the things we're adding on, such as the railing and the windows. I understand we need to do the surface prep part of it. Maybe we don't need to do the gutter, but it's the other things that we're adding on that we eventually may be on the hook for, or that I just don't think we should shoot so high. I'm glad that the roof is totally out of this now, out of the scope. But yeah, let's just worry about the surface prep. I'm saying let's do the minimum.
Okay. Phil, did you have something else, or were you just responding to, because you've still got your hand up?
Oh, sorry about the hand raised.
Okay.
I guess the response I would make is that I think this does answer the original question that Patrick was proposing, which is that we should scale back any scope of work to focus merely on the mural and avoid mission creep, as Charlie put it, by including things like a new railing or new windows or anything else. If we are somehow so successful that we raise so much extra money, those things can be taken care of in the future. New windows, a new railing, etc. But I think for now, the consensus I'm hearing from the board is that the mural project should work on raising funds for a mural and any necessary surface prep only.
Thank you. Susan?
I'm unmuted. A couple of things. I am cheap. And if the windows are something that really does need to get done, I mean, we put them off several times, but there's condensation and problems with them. I think that using part of the reserves right now to address things that Tom thinks are compelling things that if we don't address now, we need to address next year. They're not going to be any easier to put in the budget next year. And if we can get half for them, and if, I think that they're a reasonable thing to use some of our money for when we're getting double the money on those, as long as Patrick, if we give money for those, if we set aside reserve funds for those are used specifically for that stuff. I'm in favor of it. When I said before we have to use our reserves, I wasn't saying when that's a terrible thing. I'm saying if you can you spend $1 and you're going to give me $1 to get the stuff done that needs to get done, that's a good deal as far as I'm concerned and worth spending some of our reserves on.
I have a quick question, Susan. Can we use the reserves to pay off the matching funds for the grant?
Yes.
All right, then I feel a lot better about it. I just didn't want us to come up short.
The money has to come from fundraising. That's where the reserves are from. It doesn't have to be stuff that you raise during that specific period. I sat in on the meeting, Patrick, and that was the question that I was having in my mind, and they answered it. So as long as we come up with the funds for that, that reserves counts. So I just want you guys to consider the fact that I'd like to wait and get some response from Tom and have you guys approach Tom and say, if we can get 2-1 on this, and you're telling us this needs to get done before 2026, then this is the time for me to do it. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that we do not have either a full presentation from staff or, to my ears, an agreement among staff as to how to proceed. And I certainly would want to hear from Tom before we did anything significant regarding the facilities. So I'm not exactly sure Patrick, exactly what action are you asking us to take tonight, and what action is tonight the deadline for us to take?
The course that we're charting right now is to have these, well, first of all, I'm sorry, Tom isn't here, because if we can raise this money, it'll mean that we're asking Tom to follow through on those items this year or to run them. So if we were chartered as a mural team, if we were going to recharter this today, what question would we ask ourselves? What do we want to do this year? How do we want to approach that? This is going to have to be decided by the end of this quarter. So if there's requirements that you have, or I don't want to come in and by the end of this quarter, we're going to have to put an application in with a plan to the city, and that will have to say what's our scope. So this is what, if for the team that was chartered to do a mural, are you willing to expand that scope or if we contingent upon getting a certain amount of fundraise so that there's, de-risk this, so you don't, there's not too much of an outlay.
By the end of
That's
the
the question.
by the end of the quarter, does that mean close of business on Friday, March 29th?
29th. I'd like to see what we can do by then.
No, but I mean, is that the deadline? Is it close of business on Friday, the 29th? Our deadline for getting something for submitting the application?
There is not a firm debt. I'm self-imposing a deadline because I'm looking at the timeline for the fundraise, not for the application.
Okay, so you want, okay, so you need an answer by the end of the quarter, which gives us 2 more board meetings to hash this out fully to the point that we're all satisfied with.
Fair, yes.
Okay. I want to hear from Doug, and then Shali, and then Phil, and then Laura.
Yeah, just following up on your observations, Stu. I think what would be prudent is to see how the fundraising goes the next 2 months. And if there's additional significant progress made, I think the board may feel a bit more comfortable with adding things on like windows and the downspout. But if fundraising lags in the next 2 months, maybe we will want to think about submitting that proposal to the city with the minimum mural needs and not the extra things. It's becoming apparent that the fundraising is going to drive the proposal. And you may correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I see it.
Shali?
So I think we already sort of have a process to answer this question. To clarify, the funding with the city does run out, and that's a big reason of why we need to submit it in the spring, as was advised. But more to the point, if the mural needs answers to questions to fill out that application, such as lighting, railings, whatever, gutter, we're already going to have to work with Tom to really administrate it, because I'm not sure any member of the mural team is going to take that on. So we already have a process in that they go to Tom, we go to Tom, we give him notice, we ask for his perspective and what's possible for him to administrate. And then Tom lets you know and asks for board approval to include something in an application. So I don't, some of this will be dictated by fundraising, things we could do, but we already sort of have that process because that's within the scope of a staff job, and we can ask him, but he's not here and I didn't let him know. So, yeah.
Okay. Alderman Ken Golden used to have a phrase when he thought something wasn't ready to come to the council is it soup yet? I don't think it's soup yet. And actually that's why I had to turn my camera off, because I had to go down and check on my bean soup, which is not quite soup yet. Phil and then Laura.
I was just going to agree with something that Chowie said. My understanding is that the facade grant application through the city is taken on an ongoing basis. So there is not a firm, you must apply by such an X deadline. However, the city is very upfront about the fact that the earlier you get a deadline in, the more likely there is going to be money if you are approved for it.
Okay. Thank you. Laura?
Big yes to looping Tom into this discussion. He really needs to be a part of it. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the reserve funds. If I really think that that's what the purpose of the reserve funds is to reinvest back into our building, especially. And so if we're making improvements to the building, facade or otherwise, I think if we have to dip into the reserves, I'm still for this.
Okay, thank you. Shelley, were you seeking recognition? Or is your hand just still up?
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
It's okay. It's okay. Is there any, Patrick, as I understand it, there's nothing that needs being done tonight. Is that correct?
No, I think this discussion is helpful.
Okay.
Just so you understand what what the activities are. We're leading into a pledge drive, and this is a completely separate fundraise activity.
Yeah.
We're aiming, and I've been working with Susan to make sure that these are not the people that keep this place going. These are people, this is a specific capital raise.
Right. We appreciate, and we appreciate that. But for the purposes of January 17th, it's after 9. I don't think we have we don't have anything in front of us that we have to vote on tonight. I think what we need is more information from project team, track how the fundraising is going. I definitely want to hear from Tom with a firm statement as to priorities and his ability to undertake those additional administrative tasks to do stuff. So I'm going to suggest that we may, if there's anything else you want to share with us, to do so. But other than that, it may be time to move on. But Susan, did you have something to add?
Just one thing, I think that in terms of helping the mural project with their fundraising, being able to tell people that we can fix our windows and fix other things that are necessary for our building, and that money can be, the money we raise to do that can help fund a mural, is a very good message. Just want to say.
Okay. Let me ask the body this. If the money is available and Tom says his workload will incorporate, let's say, the windows, is there anybody who would be against including that in the application? So Susan, you can say, as part of the fundraising, and if we get the money, we can do this.
No, I'm saying the mural project can say, when they're soliciting people, they're not just going for a mural. They're also
right. What I think I just got a consensus on was that if the money is available, we'll do it.
Yeah.
We're not telling people we're going to do this. The pitch is, and if we get the money, we can also do this.
Is that the pitch from the mural project or from WORT? Like my pitch?
That's the pitch from the mural project.
I think I think we need to allow them to be able to say that.
Is there, well, I just asked if anybody objected to that, and I did not get any. Do we have a consensus that the mural team can say conditionally, if we get the money, this is something we can do?
Yes.
I see thumbs up. So unless Shali, and I see what, most importantly, I thumb up from Doug as well, and from Phil. So I think that's what you got out of the meeting, Patrick, is that the conditional pitch to people is not only a great mural, but if we raise enough money, we can fix our windows, and who knows what else we can do. So that's where we're at. Okay. But as we go along, we want to be kept abreast of the fundraising. And I also want to hear from Tom what he thinks his workload is going to be if the money does become available, because that's critical. Anybody else? Anybody have anything else on this at this time? Okay, so I think we moved the ball a bit.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? There will be a motion to go into closed session, but anything else? We've discussed the retreat. Any other new business to come before us before we go into closed session? Say again. Somebody said something. Okay. Okay, then No, don't go away yet, because I do want to go into closed session very briefly. So, I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Susan and Doug, we're going to have to excuse you now. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
For what reason am I being excused?
It's a closed session relating to a personnel matter.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't know the reason.
Oh, sorry. I should have stated so. Sorry. You're right. It's for personnel matter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Just very briefly to report
Turn off the microphone.
Wait.
Turn off the recording.
Yeah, bear with me a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
While in executive session, the board discussed personnel matters.
And I move to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay. Well, Tanya, they're not always this long, but we like, I thought this was a good meeting. Okay.
You're
all those
welcome,
in all
Tanya.
those.
Really glad we're all happy you're here. Me too.
Yeah.
It's a
And
great
I will,
pleasure. Thank you.
I'll send out a Google thing to work up a time for personnel to meet. Okay. And, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night,
All those
everybody.
opposed? Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you.